Good morning, everyone. How are you? Hope you enjoyed the session this morning. My session is called Show Me the Money. It's about personalization, Umbraco, in digital finance, more specifically in wealth management. It is a combined business case, so we're going to be talking a little bit about the industry and about conversions and things like that. But it's also a big technical element. So there is a demo in there, and we're going to be looking at some code as well. So there is a little bit of something for everyone. My name is Theo, Paraskevopoulos, and I am technical director at a goal partner near Oxford called Grow Create. That's us. Apart from that, you may have heard of Pipeline CRM. So that is a CRM for the Umbraco 7 back office that we released a little while ago. Today, I'll be talking quite a lot about Invest, and I will explain what that is. Invest is a solution that we came up for wealth managers and financial services in more general. It's built in Umbraco. First of all, Pipeline CRM. You may have seen some screenshots. It's out there. You can get it on NuGet. You can get it on as an Umbraco package. And if you did miss it earlier this month, I released it as open source. So the source is up there on GitHub. It's free. You can go and download, play, extend it, whatever it is you want to do. And there's quite a lot of documentation out there. If you haven't heard of Pipeline, the CRM version at least, it is, fair to say, a comprehensive, although basic CRM for Umbraco websites. You can create contacts and opportunities and organizations and segments and things like that. On the back of Pipeline CRM, so that is the open source bit. For any of you that did see the talk or one of the panels in Code Garden this year, there's going to be a commercial component to that. It's something that we will call, it's a working title, Pipeline DXS or Digital Experience Suite. And on top of the free Pipeline CRM, we're going to be adding value adds, things like personalization with profile building, behavioral segments, content that adapts based on the profile of the user, things about automation. So we're looking at things like a form workflow, contact workflow, so email this user 10 days after they have registered, things like that. And also integrations, so a platform for you to start moving things around. And an analytics bit, which is a part of Invest that I showed you today in digital finance. So it's not just about analytics on website users, but it's also getting data in and showing visualizations and charting to the end user. And that's coming up later on. It is now being developed as a product in its own right. Remember, Pipeline CRM is open source and free. This is something that we offer to our clients, to other agencies, things like that. So we're trying to put a layer on top of Umbraco that I think deliberately is missing from the CMS. So as the CMS is focusing on core content management functionality, we've heard from a lot of our clients that things like that are important and are missing. And talking to people from the HQ, it became clear that it is our job as goal partners, as developers, to look into developing this, into producing these components. And that was the thinking behind DXS. Now, one of the things I'll show you today was at the Doeg, which was the Dutch Umbraco festival. I met a really clever guy called Jeroen Weiteven, and he got me in touch with a company called O2MC, and they are essentially a big data provider or platform. So they get data in from any sources. There's a whole lot of magic about what you can do with profiling over there, and out that comes into something that you can use. Some of the benefits and the reason why I decided to put it into Pipeline is it is a big data platform, so it will do a lot of the heavy lifting that you do not want your Umbraco installation, your Umbraco database to do. It's real time, unlike things like Google Analytics. Multi-channel, it takes in any data, it works in multiple databases, and it works with multiple data input. It's easy to integrate, single line of code, that's what Flock means, single line of code. It's got some concepts. It's got a programming language called Diml, and I'll show you a little bit later, which allows for maximum flexibility. It means that it becomes our job as developers then to essentially manipulate big data. It is a language of data science, as what they call it. The last thing that's very important, because it's important to us and to our clients, about trust. You own the data, not Google or anyone like that. You own the data that goes onto this O2MC platform. You can have it cloud or on-site, which for some customers this is very important, especially in continental Europe. It will be, in the world of financial services, it will be easier to get regulatory approval if you use big data with, in this context. Now, Invest, which is the branding of the presentation today, it is Grow Create's solution. So imagine Pipeline DXS already for financial services. This is an industry that I worked with in the past for about 12, 15 years and know really well. So it was easier for me to take the concepts behind Pipeline DXS and create a vertical for financial services. These are some screenshots. I'll go into a demo a little bit later, but this is about personalization and digital finance, and that's the focus of Invest. The first live client, it is for a wealth manager called London & Capital, and they have helped us a lot to hone the product. It looks brilliant, and I'll show you later on how some of the detail behind it. Now, what Invest does for London & Capital is that it gives them an investor portal. So as a wealthy individual, you would have an account with them, and then you would go onto the portal. There's things like personalized insights and economic analysis. There is your own personal investments here and things like that. Now going into this, London & Capital and generally financial services has some big numbers. Digital finance is always will give you some big numbers. In this case, we're talking about 5,000 client portfolios. They do something like 2 billion of transactions every year and about just over 3 billion pounds of assets under management. And they are not a very big player. This is a medium-sized wealth manager. It gets a lot bigger after that. But we are talking about big numbers. One of the clients, I'll call them Client A, he's got 3 portfolios. They transact fairly busy. They transact about 1 million pounds every year for this person. And he's got just over 7.6 million pounds under management. Now, when we were building or implementing Invest for this client, we had this issue. We're doing all the work, and there is multiple layers here. There is accounting systems, there is data being fed over to Invest, there is analysis in there, and then there's a visualization, there's multiple stacks. And throughout all this, I was missing 11 pence. This is a 7.6 million pound portfolio, and I couldn't find 11 pence. I took hours of just looking 11 pence for this guy. Now, obviously, I don't think that when you are, and I imagine that this is just one some of his portfolio, that you will miss the 11 pence when your net worth is over 7 million pounds. However, it is about trust. The reason why the 11p is extremely important in this contrast is because if you can't find my 11p, how can I trust you with 11 million? How can I trust you with 7 million? It is about trust, and there is this great quote that I found. That it is mutual trust more than mutual interest that holds us together. This is by an American writer called H.L. Mencken. Now, in the context of financial services, this is an extremely potent quote. It is not just the dry, watching it for me type of world. And actually, this gets corroborated by some analysis that another company did that said, what is the primary reason for staying or for going with your financial advisor or wealth manager? And trust, and all the underlying elements of trust, things like reporting, transparency, clarity, ease of use in some ways, it was extremely important, even more important than financial returns. So you could actually sacrifice an awful lot of money just to stay with a company that you trust. Some components of trust in the context of a digital platform. One of them is about being accurate. We talked about that. Where is my 11 pence? It's about presenting relevant information. When an investor or a client is faced with information that is not relevant to them, the first question that they're going to ask themselves is that, am I really in the right place over here? In the context of digital finance, being able to see relevant information is extremely important. And the last one is seamless. What just happened here is something that you don't want your clients to ask. The thing is that, think of the word seamless. It's like it's a service or an experience that doesn't have seams. It basically means that nothing can fall off the cracks. It's fairly important that it's down to down to user experience and how you structure it, and just making sure that it all flows from one to another. Going into personalization, this is a phrase that I found in a report by PwC, and it's talking about a segment of one. Now, traditionally, we'll be talking about personalization and things like segments and about defining the user and behavior, user behavior. This is not about segmenting people and putting them into groups, audiences, or things like that. This is about a segment of one. This is about actually creating a personal experience. You can only do that with a CRM, which is why it was a natural fit to put something like Pipeline and Umbraco together. Very important on this, that segment of one is that personalization is a core service, not just a marketing tool. So the same report from PwC earlier said that one of the challenges faced in this industry, this extremely high value industry, is that clients now expect a very personalized service, and this is the biggest challenge of wealth managers or anyone in financial services to deliver that personalized service. So it's not just about getting people through the door, it's about delivering that personalized experience. Now, how do we do that? It all starts from inbound. So the idea is that we create an entire experience that is seamless, as I said earlier. So it all starts with inbound. When a user first comes to the site, we start building the profile. When we show them content after that, we make the content as relevant as possible. This is what you would probably recognize as straightforward web personalization. But it's about bringing relevance from the get-go. When there is a conversion, try to simplify the process as much as you can. Bring in account service and try to answer the questions. These are important things. There is a lot of forms to fill in. It's a multi-step process. By the way, in financial services, there is no such thing as impulse. It's not like retail where you find something, you like the price, you like the look of it, and you go and buy it. It's not like that. A conversion usually takes place over months. It usually involves many, many visits and many forms. That step of a conversion is not just filling in a form. It's very, very complicated. So you want to simplify that as possible. And then move seamlessly into account management. Account management is a very, very important part. It's not just a case of winning the business, it's about keeping it. The business model of virtually every company in financial services is one of subscriptions, so that you kind of get fees for either performance-related or events, things like transactions, things like that. So you want to keep that account management bit going. How do we do that? When the user first comes in, we create a contact in the CRM, either in the CRM or in O2MC. We start capturing history and start building a profile. Then we use it in the content. So we use it as a segment, or in some way we segment the segments here is in context. We're still on the segment of one in terms of the user, but we try to segmentize the content to adapt it to what the user finds more relevant. When the conversion happens, we update that content, so we start enriching it. So although up to here the contact is anonymous, at that point, we start updating them, we create a member area for them, we give them a login so that they can pick up where they left off. Remember that the conversion is a multi-event process over here. And the last one is that we create an account, seamlessly upgrading their access to the member zone to give them access to their full account. Before I get into the demo, one last slide about architecture over here. Now, I'm putting Pipeline in the middle here. Obviously, this is for the purpose of this presentation. Every one of these elements is as important. But the point I'm trying to make is that Pipeline in here orchestrates the movement of data. So you have your front end built in Umbraco. You have Pipeline handling inquiries and contacts. And there is various data stores that come in, whether that is the financial data that comes in or from, in this case, big data. I use those to O2MC as the focus of this demo. So let's look at the demo and let's look at some code, because this is a tech conference after all. Okay, that's going to be a little weird, so let me rotate, because I can't see the same thing on my screen. Okay, so this is going to be very awkward. All right. So this is what the user will see. This is the demo version of Invest. It includes things like economic insights, commentary, and what have you. It's a very simple website. It goes progressively more complicated. Now, in this case, as we visit, we're a first user. There's nothing, we haven't visited before. We start clicking around, and we get this, which obviously means that this is going to happen. Great. Give me a second, because that is supposed to be running locally, and I think that it's my Windows that is playing up. Okay. What will this do? This will do that. Why is this running? I tell you what, I know what this is. I think that is my Windows is going to sleep. This is very, very awkward. Okay, hold on. Is there any way I can get Windows over here? I can switch it on. Actually, if I... okay. Give me just a second. This... Let me just kick that out, because I think it's... This was not supposed to happen. So... And when it was supposed to happen, it was also... Oh yeah, my Windows is going completely to sleep. Huh? Yeah, no, and it's not live coding either. It's not. It's just Windows is going to sleep. No, it's not responding. Okay. Okay. Plan B. I have a plan B. I'm just going to come up with it now, though. Okay. No, Windows does not like me today. So what I'll do is I'll show you some...
Just hit enter, because it might just clear that. I think. There you go.
You think that's it?
You should be able to.
You're joking.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Let me see. Wow. Who is the Parallels magician? So after that small interlude, which I hope you all enjoyed, seeing me squirm over here. So Invest is back, Windows is back, Invest is back. So this is the website, and there is a whole lot of content. And as we click around and we take in the content that we're interested in. Now, at this point, I have already started sending data over to O2MC, so to this big data repository. So I'm beginning to build a user profile. Now, behind the scenes, and this is the Umbraco installation behind it. So behind the scenes, I have got Pipeline running. This is Pipeline, which is another section in Umbraco if you've never seen it before. Now, what's happening is that I've done this. Usually, I wouldn't do that. Usually, I'd leave this anonymous user into the big data repository because I don't want to contaminate my data, but I'm bringing it here for demo purposes. Now, what I've done is that I have created an anonymous user. As this user is being created, big data source behind it is collecting all sorts of data, and that goes all the way down to mouse over data. So it's not just the clicks. But in my case over here, in the CRM, I start creating a profile, and in some case, the timeline here, for example, will tell me what pages the visitor has seen. So I'm beginning to build a profile. There's a lot more data coming in from O2MC, but in this case, I'm keeping it simple. Now, one of the things that I can do, I'll do this manually over here to illustrate the point, is that I have got some custom parameters for a contact here called preferences. In this case, they can be something like whether this user has got any particular interests in terms of asset classes or whatever it is in the financial space. So I'll just say it's UK and they're a private investor. Now, usually, and I'll show you some code later, this will happen behind the scenes. So as the user consumes content, this interest profile is going to start getting automatically generated. But for demo purposes, I'll show you how it's done here, and also to show you the fact that it can change by an actor of support or somebody in the digital team. What that does, by placing them in there, it also means that they can also be made automatically parts of the segment. So I have got a segment over here called, say, UK fixed income, and it's got similar filters as the user on the front end. So this segment over here applies to investors that are private investors and are interested in these areas. And you can see that already as I get a preview of the users that are in my segment, that this anonymous user is in there. Keep that in mind. This user belongs to the UK fixed income segment. Back in my content, if you remember the homepage, I had that mosaic of content. I have started creating a map of that content. So in this case, using nested content, I have got the title and which article it needs to go to. And I have got, it's a new property editor. It's nothing but a drop-down menu that gives you a list of the segments. And I specify that this article belongs, or users of that segment should see that article first. So the next time that the user starts going to the home page, you'll see that the content over here starts updating, prioritizing the content that they're interested to see first. Now, this is a very, very simple demo, even if Windows failed me right there. But it's a very simple demo, but once you extrapolate the number of data sources that come in, how automated this entire thing can be, and the fact that you can apply this really easily to virtually every piece of content on the site, this becomes a very, very powerful concept. The next thing, actually let's look at some code to see how this was put together. Will it start me from here? It won't really. No, it will. Excellent. As I mentioned earlier, DIML is it's called a declarative markup language. It's created by O2MC. So this is my one way of start feeding information into the big data platform. Just one single line of code, as you would expect. Now, at this point, what this platform does is that you get data in, so it consumes lots and lots of data. And by the way, depending on your implementation, depending on your relationship with O2MC, you can actually enrich it with data from other websites, from social. There is no limit other than the ethical limit, obviously, of what it is that you can do over there. And then, using DIML, which is a programming language, you can actually get analytics out. DIML looks like that. So there is a sandbox, and it is a declarative language. It's essentially what it says. So I'll just give you two concepts over here. So a concept is a fundamental building block in DIML. So the first one collects event data. So essentially you get the title and the page, and then you start creating date stubs. There is some SQL over here that puts it, and I think that this one goes into this goes into a MongoDB data source. You can choose to debug, so that's going to give you nice debugging messages into the console. Stream to kind of run real time, and then the whole thing runs. So this is a way of getting data into O2MC platform. The next concept is an API. We'll see how it's used later. Essentially gives you an API endpoint that you can call to get data out. I'm not an expert in DIML anyway, so I'm not going to get into the details of that. You can read up on it. It's extremely powerful, and it is built by data scientists who have got a relationship with the University of Eindhoven, so there is a university connection over there. It's extremely interesting and powerful stuff. We're going to make use of that endpoint later. Okay, this is a piece of code to kind of show you how it can be used. So we have got a method here that gives you a list of the current user's interests. So the user has been on the site, they start kind of interacting. We're using a cookie called Pipeline Contact ID. So we're using that value as a primary key. It's married up between big data platform and Pipeline. And essentially what we're doing is that we're just calling the API. It will give us back a list of strings, kind of like a list of interests, asset classes, whatever, and then we kind of get that back. Jeroen and I will be working into creating a library for this, so basically a collection of methods that you can use to make that easier, but for the time being, this is just a low-level implementation. How it's being used, it is for example, to match content with visitors. This is not using, so if you didn't want to use the segments in Pipeline, well, you call that method, and then you can just pass in that method a list of Umbraco content, so I publish contents, and then just make sure, return the interests that contain the theme of that page, and that will order that list, and then you can prioritize your content like that. It's about as simple as that at this point. Let's do one more thing before we get into the next part. Okay. So what we'll do now is we've started building the user's profile. We started personalizing the content. We're now going to get into the conversion. I have deliberately made the conversion extremely simple over here. So it's just a contact us form, and let's assume that it is just a guy called Neil, and he wants to say hello. Obviously, this would be, in real life, an extremely complicated form. And then we send that back, and then out it goes. Now, there is, behind the scenes, this is all Umbraco forms, and there is a connector that sends form submissions from into Pipeline. So what just happened was that if I go back to Pipeline here, my contact, who used to be that random contact, has now got a name. So I have used the Pipeline API to start populating the information. So the important thing here is that there is a continuity between the information that I had, the profile that I had when the user was anonymous, and now that I know who they are. One of the things, going back into, let's look at some code actually. Nope. Okay. So how do we get the profile? Two ways to do this. One way, if we go the DIML route. So again, we call the API. It's a similar thing as before, and we have specified a new API endpoint. So back in the DIML screen, if you remember, we create a new endpoint that basically gets us a whole lot of profile information. If you're working in a more retail environment, you can get social, you can get all sorts of stuff. Anything that you have specified goes into big data, can also be so it can be processed, interrogated, boiled down, and into a profile. So you can, in this case, all I'm doing is just kind of like, I've created the poker here called profile, and it's got things like the how many times they visited and what type of content they're more interested in seeing, but it can include a whole lot of stuff. So that's one way of doing it, if you're working with DIML. Another way of doing it, this is how you implement it. So the contact form that I just submitted, you check it, then you kind of get the profile, the method that I showed you just earlier, and then you use, Pipeline comes with a number of helpers, so you can use the helper to just create a new pipeline or opportunity, name, email, phone, as you saw before, and you can just leave a comment over here, just say that this user is interested in this. So this is very, very simple integration, but it's an easy way to get contact forms, either from Umbraco forms or a standalone controller into Pipeline. Back into the demo. Now, one of the things that Pipeline does, and obviously invests in Harris after that, is that when you create a contact, if you want to, you can switch that off. It also integrates with the Umbraco member area. So in this case, I've automated the creation of a member. So this user, who was called Neil, can log in. Now it assumes here that we have given them some permissions, we set a password, we email them. This is stuff that you will need to automate, but this happens automatically. Now in this case, as soon as that gets created, the user also has got access to messages. We're getting into the multi-step conversion territory over here. So they filled in a contact form, and now they want to see they want to interact with us. So this is the time for us to help them continue with the submission. So the original query is here. So essentially we kind of kicked off a support portal or extranet with this user. And the way that this works is that your internal users, so digital team, we kind of get would get the, where was Neil? I don't see Neil. There we go, there is Neil. Okay, so we have got this, first of all, before I get into it, so for people that have not seen Pipeline, so Pipeline includes the opportunities board, this Trello-like board, and then as opportunities come in, I have set it to automatically come here, but usually will come in unassigned, and then various people will get assigned to it and move things along. So that's a little support interface. Going back to Neil. There you go. So they have asked a question, and then it will be my job to tell them hi there, and then I can also maybe add a file for them if there is a form for them to complete. There usually is a tick box in here that says make this public. So that's something that I've taken out for brevity. So there is a security layer behind it. But in this case, Neil will get an email, and when they go over to the messaging board, they will see my response, and they can raise new inquiries. And this entire communication layer is happening. It's all fairly seamless. It's all the same user basically carried across. Let's look at some more code to see how that was done. No, this one I won't show you. So this is a very simple way using the Pipeline API to create, this is the basic of that messaging service that I just showed you. So you can get the contact ID, get the pipelines, so the opportunities for this user. You probably need to filter them at this point. Not some of it will be internal. Order them, and then as soon as you have your messages, you can just basically, in your view, start looping through them. So it's fairly simple. I mean, Pipeline includes lots and lots of helpers and services. You can, obviously you've got access to the source code now, but there is some documentation of how it's done. It's fairly comprehensive in that way. The last thing to show you would be over here. So if we go back to Neil. Now Neil has gone through the process. He's become a client. We've put him onto the systems. We onboarded them, if you like. And it's now time to upgrade the login area so that we can start showing them their investments. Once again, there is many checks behind this, but for brevity, all I've done here was just given it a little checkbox where we just give them, for example, the ID of an external portfolio. So there's a portfolio ID coming from another system. And it could be as simple as that. Many checks and balances here, but as you understand. But the point is that when the first login, when the next login, now the My Investments area will become visible. This is the part of Invest now. This is a very specific to financial services bit where you have got a whole lot of reporting and charting that has to do with the investor's portfolio. So in this case, we have got their investments, breakdowns by asset class, currency, or geography, and then they can see individual portfolios. So when they go in, there is some stats about how the portfolio has been performing over time. And then in this case, it kind of drops down all the way to show you individual holdings or transactions, this portfolio. So this is a fairly comprehensive review of the financial situation. And this is the invest bit, as I said. Okay. This is a little video that we created for London Capital to show on one of their events. So that shows you, if not the thing live, but it shows you a little bit of where the benefits where they see the benefits being. And one of them, very important, wealth management from different angles, being able to slice and dice the data. Personalized insights, you can see how even for the client, is a very, very important benefit to be able to show relevant information. There is a lot of they've augmented their implementation with a lot of forums and things, subscriptions to events and things like that. The idea is that once you do have a captive audience and you have personalized content, you can do lots with it. And then obviously the fact that it is available in multiple devices. So that is very good. In closing, I talked about how trust is paramount in digital finance and why it is so important. Some components of trust are you need to be accurate, so relevant content and provide a seamless user experience. Think about a segment of one. In high value sectors like digital finance, it's not a volume gain. One single conversion can be in the tens of thousands in terms of revenue for a company. It's extremely important. The strategy is to kind of work across the board with a visitor, from inbound to content, conversion, and beyond into account management. I showed you some codes and some demo about how we build profiles and we personalize with Timu. And I also talked about the Pipeline DXS, how you can think of it as an Umbraco big data gateway in this case. There's going to be lots more coming from there. I'm going to put that up onto slides somewhere, so I'm leaving those links over there for your information. Some of the demo stuff that I talked about earlier, and the link for Pipeline CRM open source, and these are the links where we are. And that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll take any questions that you have. Yeah?
The bit at the beginning, where you're, when the user's anonymous, you start collecting the data immediately.
Yeah.
Their profiles. Looks like, I mean, I'm not a coder, just, you know, but a lot of you doing that with cookies. Now, you said the conversion process can take a long time. Well, how do you deal with that if they're looking at it over a period of time with different devices? Or can you only really deal with that once they've logged in?
There are ways to, usually what we do with this, when we've seen that scenario, is that we marry accounts post-conversion. So after we have identified the user and they become known on the device where the cookie was found, and you're right, it was cookies, then we try to identify where duplicates have been and try to augment the profile with the history and the timeline from other devices. It's not always possible. Yeah, but the power in that, and actually there is much more power doing that at the demo end. So when you're working with a big data provider rather than with just raw C# or doing it in Umbraco. This is it is a place. There are some answers, but it's not an exact science. Yeah?
You showed that you could assign content or content to different segments. Can you view a page as a particular segment or as a particular user?
Yes, there is. This was extremely important. The question was whether you can preview a page as a particular user. Yes, there is a preview functionality where in Umbraco, when you get to impersonate a particular user or a segment, so you can go in as a particular user. That became first, it became important when we're building the portfolio thing, so the financial information, so that they're called portfolio managers, basically relationship managers, can see what the user is seeing in terms of their investments. But as a nice side effect of that, they can also see the content area as that user sees it. Yes. Yeah?
How much of that data were you storing in Umbraco? How much of that? How much of that data were you actually storing in the Umbraco data store or some local data store? And excuse me, how much was in your big data provider?
The cutoff point is the user revealing themselves, so the conversion point, the first conversion point. Anything when they're anonymous, it is too fuzzy. It is still too unreliable a data to put into a live implementation. I mean, in a retail situation, you will have tens of thousands of anonymous users until some people convert. So you'd leave that into a big data provider of some description, and they were talk of doing it with just a Mongo database or something like that. And then the moment they make themselves known, then it becomes a job of a CRM.
And can you do that seamlessly, so you actually can then control all that big data and just bring it into your...
Yeah, exactly. So the piece of code that I showed you about using the Pipeline API to create a contact or an opportunity, it's used because the big data provider is using the same ID. Yeah, I can bring in stuff. So at the moment of creating an entry into Pipeline CRM, I can also interrogate the big data and get anything of the profile that is useful. Anyone else? Yeah.
How separate are the layers? Like, so we work for an organisation that has a huge, horrible enterprise CRM system. They wouldn't dream of allowing us to have user information in the content management system.
Yep.
But harvesting user behaviour and being able to pass that off to a service, store that would be really cool.
Yep.
Is it layered? Could we, separate out the CRM?
Good question. I don't see why not. In this case, what happens in this particular implementation, Umbraco, so the front end of the website and the CRM are in the same installation, as I saw you over here. So we take care to secure the entire Umbraco installation, but I don't see it being a point to be able to separate the two. So put the CRM in a completely different part. The only issue you would have over there is that you probably have to write some report, some kind of REST API to send. So when you want to create a new contact from the website over to Pipeline in another location, just basically send it over there. But it would be a matter of just writing a quick service controller. So I can't see that being a problem. Yeah, they can be separated out. I think that's a short answer. Anyone else? Yeah.
Have you had any issues with caching when dealing with personalization?
Who hasn't? And actually, hey, who knows where the 11 pence was? It wasn't in caching, but it was in the next possible culprit, which is a JavaScript layer and rounding. But caching, yes, there is issues. So one of the not on the personalization in big data, because that happens asynchronously. That's a separate layer. But the first place is is when you're getting financial data down. It is a lot of queries to create that chart that I had that I showed you on the demo. That is a lot of data to bring in. So we inevitably have to cache that, and that creates issues of accuracy. In this case, the data is not real time, so the data gets refreshed on a daily basis. So that's less of an issue. We set the cache to expire on a daily basis. But when you do have real time data, then you do have to fine-tune that. In some cases, not necessarily for this client, we actually had to take a particular visualization out of the page load and then just draw it asynchronously, because it was, then you can essentially render the entire page and then just bring in the data set for this really, really slow chart, just bring it asynchronously after everything else is loaded. Personalization and caching are not best friends, obviously, and I think there was the question earlier about being able to preview a page as a particular user. That comes into play as well, and you preview as a particular user, and you still see your own content because it has cached. There is things that you need to do over there to overcome it. Yeah?
What's the kind of maximum? In any of the sites that you've worked on, what's the kind of maximum users that you've been able to kind of test it with so far?
Well, my personal stress tests were, when I was making it, I wrote a little stress test engine that created, say, 10,000 Pipeline users. And Pipeline was just fine with that. The thing is that all the lists in Pipeline are paginated, so you won't have problem bringing in or searching for 100 users at a time. I haven't seen any performance issues with Pipeline. The data is fairly straightforward, so doing a search or something like that is fairly quick.
Are they always linked with the member groups as well?
Not always, no. There is a flag in Pipeline config And you can see that in the documentation that basically says false, true or false, whether to create a member with to create a member automatically. It's not everyone's cup of tea, so I'm letting people decide.
Does Pipeline use its own SQL tables, or is it
Yeah.
using Umbraco data stores? Or?
Is using tables within the same installation as Umbraco. If there is a request for me to separate it out, that could be fairly easy. If you look at the code, there is just one layer. There's one place where the data connection gets specified. So in theory, as long as it is another SQL database, you can take it onto another onto a completely different database.
Would you not use a document database for anything bigger?
I'm thinking about it in the context of the DXS bit. So, for example, for the commercial aspect, if you like, so the heavy usage of Pipeline. So I am thinking about abstracting out the data access layer and then all the queries and everything, and then in theory just let the open source be something for lighter implementations within Umbraco, and then use something like a MongoDB or something for really heavy duty use. But for that, I'll need to get paid. So I'll need to have a real client with this to try it out. Anyone else? Looks like this is it. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for your attention.